In this video tutorial, we will be talking about how to use the AutoCAD object snaps. Object snaps can be found down here. Here are some of them right here. We can also click on the down arrow, go to Object Snap Settings, and we have the Object Snap tab, and we have them running right here. Typically what we do is we select all and we uncheck nearest. The reason we unchecked the nearest snap tool is because the nearest tool overrides all the other ones, because nearest allows you to snap onto any point of any object, which then overrides all the other ones. It's not that we never use nearest, it's just when we do, we usually select that individually and use it temporarily. So I'm going to close these out. I'm going to make sure my object snap tool is blue, so it's running, it's active. That's called object snaps that are running in the background, or running object snaps. We're going to use the object snaps in the most advanced way in AutoCAD. And what we mean by that is the object snaps will be running in the background, and then we will temporarily override them and select a single object snap, use it, and then the object snaps that were selected that we showed you a moment ago resume and continue running in the background. So we're also going to use our mouse wheel to press the wheel to move around the drawing, and we're going to use it to zoom in and out by rolling it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to zoom into the directions right here. And the first thing it says to do is create a layer with your name using the color cyan or number 4. So I'm going to click on the Layers properties, bring that up. I'm going to click a new layer icon, and I'll call it Mark Smith. And I'll move it out of the way temporarily so I can read my next direction. The number 2 says set the line type to dash dot for the new layer, and we'll do that. So I'm going to go to continuous. I'm going to select dash dot. There it is. So I now have the layer Mark Smith. It's dash dot. And I believe the other thing they wanted us to do was to make the layer color cyan. So if I click on here, cyan is that blue color. But if I just put in a number, I'll just click on it. There we go. Number 4. Click OK. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it current. I'm going to click right here to make it current. So now the check mark is there. The other way to make it current is to do this. Let's go back to the one that was originally current, and we can make it current like this. So I have my layer, I have my line type associated with the layer, I have the color associated with the layer, and then the other thing it says to do is turn the phantom and miscellaneous layers on and off as needed for reference. So right now, when I originally opened this drawing, this layer was on. And this gives an example of what we're going to create. We're going to start here, go down here. We're going to follow this all around, creating this purple phantom line as you see it, except ours won't be purple or phantom. It will be using the layer we created. And mine's called Mark Smith. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off. Now we can turn this back, we can turn it on and off as we need to, but I'm going to turn that off. I also mentioned, okay, so it's off. So then, using my mouse wheel, I'm going to go into the next set of directions. It says position A from an existing point entity at A, and it says we're going to use the node. Alright, there it is. There's a node right there. There's point A. I'm going to go up to the line command, and all the object snaps running in the background, you can see the little green icons appear as I move to different objects, okay, because they're running. But I'm going to temporarily override them by holding the Shift key, right click, and I need to find the node snap tool. Click it with your left mouse button, and it right there. And if you let it rest there, it'll tell you what it is. Notice that window came up, says node, so I'll click on that, and there we go. Now we'll move on to the next point, position B. To halfway along the line at B, and it says use midpoint. So here's line B right here, but we want to override everything that's running to where just the midpoint snap tool will be running temporarily. And there it is. Now all the other snap tools now continue working again. Now we're ready for C. C is all the way down here. So C says to the intersection formed by lines 1 and 2 at C. And it says use apparent intersection. Now these two lines don't really intersect, but if they did, we want to put a point to where they would. So we'll go shift right click and we're going to go apparent intersection. So if I hover over this line, that little box appears, I'll click on it. Hover over this one, notice down by the C that X forms. So when the X is there, if I left click, notice it doesn't say apparent intersection, but it is. And there we go. The next one is position D, which is right in this area. Position D to the rightmost point of the circle at D. We're going to use the quadrant tool. A circle has 4 quadrants, if you will. Here's one, here's another one, here's another one, there's another one. Or we'll say the 4 corners of the circle. Circles don't really have corners, but that's just a way of speaking. So I'll click on it right there, and it snapped to that. Now all the other snap tools are now running. So next one, position E, so we need to go to there. To the center of the same circle at E, and we're going to use the center tool. So we're going to shift right click, select the center tool, all the other O snaps, object snaps turn off, and then the center tool starts. Now notice when I'm not at the center, am I? I'm just touching the edge. Notice the center word popped up, and notice the green circle around the center, at the center of the circle by E. So if I left click, it snaps to that center, and now all the other snap tools are running again. Next one, to F, making a 90-degree angle with line 2. Here's line 2, and it wants us to make a 90-degree or be perpendicular. We want to come in at 90 degrees to that line. So I'm going to go shift, right click, select perpendicular, and there it is. So I'm now at 90 degrees to that line. The next one we're going to go to is G. So it says to G, just touching the arc. So we're going to go to the tangent area of that arc. So I'm going to click on tangent. Notice these snap tools are not alphabetical. Boy, it'd be great if they were. Someone needs to tell Autodesk to put these in alphabetical order. But after a while, you get a feel for where they are. So I'll click tangent. Go up here, I click right there. And that's the tangent spot between this starting point and that circle. Once you've used tangent, all the other snap tools have now turned back on. So now we're going to go to H. Now this is going to get a little tricky here. You got to use it just right. So in H, it says to H, exactly 0.75 in the direction of line 2. And we're going to use extension. So they want us to put a snap point right up here. Of course, we can use the end point right there because there's an object there. But in real life, the object wouldn't be there. We just have it there to show you where you're going and how far. So using the extension tool is tricky because once you select extension, you can't roll over any other lines. Otherwise, it extends from those. So we want it to extend from that point right there. Okay, so I'm going to go shift right click. I'm going to go extension. And I'm going to click on that. Now notice it's there. Come on, no. I rolled over another one, so I got to go back here. Extension. Here we go. Now you can't see it maybe very well in your video, but can you see that little dashed green line? Notice it says extension, the pop-up window. Tells you exactly where you are. The great thing about extension is it causes the line that is tracking off of the line we touched, which is line number 2. It causes it to track at the exact same angle without ever knowing what that angle is. Very powerful tool. All I have to do is put in 0.75 at the keyboard, and it snaps me right to the top where it should. That's called extension. Okay. After H, we're going to go to I. which says to point I a half inch above the quadrant of the circle. We're going to use the from tool. And so what I'm going to do temporarily here is I'm going to turn my phantom layer back on. Okay, so there's I showing us half inch above the circle. I can turn it back off now. That's called transparent. And I can do certain things in the middle of a command. So notice I was able to turn that layer on and off without disrupting my line. I was able to click on the graphics area to get rid of that pop-up layers menu without interfering with how I'm using my line. Okay, so again, now all the object snaps are running. So I says we're going to use the from. Okay, so I'm going to go shift right click from. Now the reason we have the object snaps running in the background is because if they weren't and I clicked from, my tools wouldn't always pop up properly. So see that triangle? That's my quadrant, which is running in the background, and I'm going to use the quadrant after I selected from, which means it's going to measure from that point. It's not actually snapping to it. That's a temporary snap. Now I need to turn my ortho on, so I go at 90 degrees. And that I is 0.5 above that circle. Okay, I'm going to turn my ortho back off. The reason I use the ortho is because it snaps it at 90 degrees above that I. The extension works a little differently. It makes your line go parallel to the line you selected. But we don't have a line here. We have an object like a circle, so we had to use from and then turn on my ortho to make it go straight up. Okay, using the wheel to pan back down. Now we're going to J. It says to the beginning of line J, you drew first, use endpoint. Okay, so let's go back here. Here's my beginning point. So I'm going to go shift right click, endpoint, click right there. Well, I need to turn my phantom back off so it's not in the way. There we go. Okay, so next we're going to is K. It says K to the lowest left area K of the letter O in O snaps. And it's going to be insertion. So every time you create text in AutoCAD, depending on how you set the text up, maybe it was middle center, middle left, middle right, however you set it up, that is where the insertion point of the text is. So we're going to go down here to insert, and you'll see we get these double little rectangles. Okay. Well, as soon as those appear, click, and you snap to the insertion point of that object. Okay. We have 2 to go. Now we're going to do M. It says to a tentative, meaning temporary location, 0.75 above the quadrant of the semicircle. And we're going to use temporary tracking point. Okay. And we're going to go shift right click, temporary tracking point. Okay. Get that quadrant again. And temporary tracking point. And we're going to go 0.75. And there it is. It's 0.75. Then we have one more. And the last one says position in to end landing exactly between the midpoints of lines 3 and 4. And we're going to use mid between 2 points. So we're going to go shift right click, mid between 2 points. And because my object snaps are running in the background, I'll get my endpoint snap tool, endpoint snap tool again, and now hit enter. So now I've just created that line. Let's see if ours matches the answer key. So we'll turn the phantom back on. And yes, it does. It does match. I'm going to turn it back off. So the idea is to do this, to be able to do this 2 times without having to leave the line command and go back into it. So it's a continuous line. Once you do that twice, that's usually enough to get an idea of how these tools actually work. And that is running object snaps with override.